body looked as if they performed an autopsy on him whilst he was alive. And he remains in Guantanamo Bay as one of the youngest people there. He's now 22. He came in as a 14-year-old and he's now 22. This is what Guantanamo is about. There are people there held that don't even know what it is that they're supposed to have done, and still don't understand. Even the people who have been released from there still don't understand, the great majority of them. And if we try to remember and recognize that we, when we're looking at Guantanamo, are simply looking at the tip of the iceberg. And remember, the iceberg, it's never the tip that does the damage. It's what lies beneath, what's hidden from view. That's where the damage is done. And when we're talking about, and this is my message to absolutely everybody, even if Guantanamo closes tomorrow, will that be the end of the problem? Has anybody heard of this film called Taxi to the Dark Side?
Yes.
Please put your hands up.
Yes.
Well, 10 people out of, I don't know, 300? This film won the Oscar for Best Documentary last year, and it did so because I'm in it. It did win the Oscar, and it's available outside. But the reason why it's so important, why this film is so important, and why so few people know about it, is because it addresses what took place in Bagram. It addresses the murder that I witnessed with my own eyes of one of the detainees there who was shackled with his hands above his head to the top of the ceiling with a hood placed above it, and was kicked repeatedly and punched, and eventually taken off to a place where he was further brutalized and eventually killed. If you imagine a place like Bagram where people are not allowed to talk, they're not allowed to walk, they're not allowed to do anything without the say-so of the interrogators, and being in a dark place for all of this time, not knowing what the next interrogation means, hearing the sounds of women screaming that you're made to believe are your relatives being tortured next door. If you can imagine all of this and more, then you can think, oh, actually, going to Guantanamo Bay can't be that bad. And that's precisely how I and many others who were held in Bagram felt. I had intended to begin what I was going to say with a poem written by Samuel Hatch, but unfortunately the book, which is called Poems from Guantanamo, has all sold out. So I'm going to have to read one of my poems just to finish off with, and then I'll pass on to Omar Bigas, who will speak to you, and we will finish then with myself and Chris in conversation about my time and his in Guantanamo. I wrote this. This is the first poem that I ever wrote in my life, and it was in Camp Echo, which is solitary confinement, maximum security, and it's amazing because I've never thought of poetry before. It's called Homeward Bound. Begins this journey without reins, ends in capture without aims. Now lying in the cell awake with merriment and smiles all fake. Freedom is spent, time is up. Tears have rent my sorrow's cup. Home is cage, and cage is steel. Thus manifest realities unreal. Dreams are shattered, hopes are battered, yet with new status, one is flattered. The irony of it, detention and all, be so small and stand so tall. Years of tears and days of toil are now but fears and tyrant spoil. Ordainment has surely come to pass, but endure alone one must this fast. Now patience is of virtue taught, and virtue is of iron wrought. So poetry is in motion set, perhaps with appreciation. Still the paper do to our pen, knowing what, but never when. As dreams begin and nightmares end, I'm homeward bound, beloved Ken. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan, brother Hudson, for that speech. Unfortunately, we learned that this is the sad reality of Guantanamo Bay. Without any further ado, again, we'd like to pass it over to Brother Omar.
Brothers
and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to first thank you all for inviting us to this place and for a lively audience like your audience. I want to thank, this tour has been an opportunity to thank many people who have worked on our behalf when we were in prison, wrote letters and campaigned endlessly to make it possible, after the grace of Allah, that we are free and in front of you. We are, this seeing us should, I hope, will encourage you more to be endlessly work harder and to see your fruits in front of you, that people are, your work, your hard work and your patience and campaigning does result into embarrassing those big powers, into releasing people who are free without charges, who are innocent, have not been charged for 6 or 7 years. I would like to just speak a little bit about how it is inside, those people who are inside Guantanamo, how it feels for, because there are people in Guantanamo, there are more than 300, I think approximately now 300 left in Guantanamo Bay who are locked in that place. And they have asked us when we left Guantanamo Bay to speak about them, and every time we promise that every time we stand in a public meeting, though we are not good speakers, but it's that we promise them that every time we are able to, we'll speak to the people about their plights and remind them that there are still people locked up in that awful place. Being locked up in Guantanamo, you might be exposed to the fear of death and being murdered every morning. There have been people who have been murdered in front of our eyes. I've seen Yasser Zahrani being murdered. I've seen Ali Saleh being murdered. I've seen Al-Amri being murdered. I've witnessed Amana Al-Atali being killed and murdered. Being in Guantanamo, you wake up to the fear of being murdered every morning, a possibility that can happen to you. According to the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, I kept saying this again and again in other meetings because he is an American and he is a right-winger, somebody who supports Bush, and he writes in the New York Times, and he said that he thinks that Guantanamo Bay should be shut down, not because it's wrong or it's because it's torture happens there, but he thinks it's politically wrong. It caused us more damage politically. So I like always to take him as a witness. He says in the New York Times 2005, he wrote an article saying, Mr. President, shut down Guantanamo. He said there are more than 100 detainees have died under the United States detention centers. Nobody in Guantanamo, and all other detentions, more than 100, he said, died. And all those 100 died from heart attack. He said heart attack, this is not only politically wrong, but it's also grossly immoral. Being in Guantanamo, you'll be exposed to your eyes being gouged, pulled out, like what happened to Ashad, the Pakistani, his eyes was taken out. Like what happened to another Algerian man, I can't remember his name. Like what happened to a prisoner 727, he was pulled down to the ground, and in front of the officer, a guard pushed his finger into his eyes to pull his eyes out, and he said to him more and more because the prisoner didn't shout. And so on. Being in Guantanamo, you are exposed to being amputated. Like Abdul Rahman al-Nasri was amputated, his leg was amputated because he had a small injury at the bottom of his leg. So he was amputated from his thighs. Why? Because it would make him even more disabled if he had the leg, the artificial leg to use. Like Imran al-Taifi, like many others, like someone who, a Moroccan young man who lost his finger. Because what they do is they leave your injury until your injury gets worse and worse, and it becomes, the only solution for it is amputation. They say, we have no cures for you. You are a terrorist, the only cure is amputations. If you have any problem with your teeth, we don't cure your teeth. We cannot fill your teeth. The only cure for your teeth is we pull your teeth out if you want. If you are in real pain, like so many people were sometimes in real pains, they take them to the dentist Like, I know a Tunisian young man who was locked up there. They take him to a dentist, and this teeth is painful. They take out other 2 teeth